Gotta get everything in order. Give me a kiss for luck, will you? Ooh, that's salty. Esports pools. Now, the ESL Pro League Season 6 Final is upon us. Oof, that's bad stuff. And it's the dream final, the one that everyone has been waiting for. FaZe versus SK Gaming, and in a best of 5 setting. They're the two best teams in the world right now. Winners of a combined 4 events over the last 3 months, 2 each, so even distribution. I'd say FaZe got the better end of it because their 2 events were 2 huge events with normal style formats, whereas one of SK's was Blast, which obviously had quite a weird format and ended up being thrown off a little bit by the whole Astralis situation. Both have had a lot of top 4s. Off the top of my head, I think 6 each, with since the player break, that is. There's obviously the storyline of Fallen versus Karrigan, where when Karrigan has played in offline best of 3 and best of 5 series against Fallen, he has lost all 8 of them, and this will now be his 9th chance to get a win there. That includes his time when he's in Astralis as well. It's not only when he's in FaZe. And within that subtext, within that storyline rather, is the subtext that he's also lost 9 times on Overpass and hasn't won a single game in those best of 3s, in those best of 5, in those settings against Fallen's teams. And we know absolutely Overpass will be a map in this best of 5, assuming we get to the relevant map that it is going to be on, in case it's the 4th or the 5th map, which actually I think there's a decent chance it will be. It's arguably the best CT side in the world, FaZe. I think that's actually pretty cut and dry that they are. But the arguable part is versus the best T side in the world. I would actually say you could make a pretty strong case SK is the best T side in the world. It's obviously map dependent, but they have a pretty wide and deep map pool. So I think that's pretty fair to say, especially when you look at Cold Zero and Fur are amazing on the T side. So I think it's a pretty solid kind of case to make. And then just a player basis, Cold Zero versus Nico. Battle of the 2 best players in the world, arguably. 2 premier players, 2 marquee names playing for the 2 best teams going head-to-head. Whereas obviously last year, we never really got to see that matchup because Nico was stuck in Mouse Sports, who wasn't at the level of an SK Gaming. This year, obviously Nico's been in FaZe. They have done battle head-to-head. Obviously, SK's come out with the victory a lot of times, but Nico's had some good performances himself. Now, both teams got to the final by basically the same exact route. They both topped their groups 4-1. FaZe lost an overtime game to Fnatic in their first game. SK lost early on in a 14-16 game against Optic, so very narrow losses. Beyond that, they've done very, very well. Since they both got to skip to the semi-finals, since that was the format of this tournament, same as all the other IEMs and EPLs, which by the way means that for yet another tournament we will have the skip to the semi-final curse broken. So CSGO's turned out to be very different from 1.6 in that sense, since obviously one of these 2 teams is going to win. Both of them smashed the semi-finals. Like, FaZe comfortably beat Fnatic, and SK absolutely rolled Misfits. It was a complete mismatch there. So both teams looking in top form, very, very strong. Now, we think of FaZe, and we always think of the 3 maps that they're godlike on. We think of their Mirage, they're 12-2 on it. We think of their Overpass, they are 10-1 on it. We think of their Inferno, one of the toughest maps in the world to play right now. Not many teams with very strong records on it. They're 9-3 on it. Beyond that, then they have the maps that they can play if pushed to. So that's Cash and that's Train. Cash, they've got a 4-1 record on. Train, they've got a 3-4 record on. They've also had a tie. Then they've got the 2 maps they don't really want to play. So there's Nuke, but they've barely had to play it. They played it 3 times. They've lost it twice. And they played Cobblestone twice, tested it out twice, but lost to Virtus.pro, lost to NIP. And so they definitely don't want to play those. So for FaZe, it's still the same story as it ever was. If they can get you onto Mirage, Overpass, and Inferno, they've got a very good chance of winning, and they can beat literally pretty much every team in the world on those. The only ones they haven't really beaten, obviously, is SK on Overpass, but they beat everyone else on it. They went 10-1 on it. So they're absolutely outrageously good on that map. So if they get you onto those 3 maps, they've got a very good chance of winning. So in any best of 3, any best of 5, they've got a really good chance of going to 3 maps, if not outright winning the series. Now, we go over to the SK Gaming side of things, much wider map pool. So on Cobblestone, they are 5-0 Fantastic record, but obviously they don't play it as much as a lot of the other maps. On Overpass, they're 5-2. Very, very good record. On Mirage, traditionally a very strong map for them. Earlier in the summer when they had Phelps, when they were the best team in the world, the best map for them, actually become a much more rocky map for them. They are now 5-4 on that map, including a loss to FaZe. That one's a bit more rocky. It's gotten a bit more in the middle of the map pool. Then Train, they have a very good record on. They're 4-1 on it. But even though it's very good and they're only lost to Cloud9, who's a pretty good Train team themselves, the opponents they're playing aren't always that great. Not that many people play Train at the moment. They've only played it 5 times themselves. This feels like this could be fool's gold. I feel like that's more like I would even say their Mirage personally is better than their Train, just looking at it with the eye test, even if the results say they've lost Mirage a lot more, but they've also played Mirage a lot more, and they've played against very good teams on it. Cash, they are 4-1 on, but obviously, traditionally, even though it's another map they were very strong on with Phelps in the summer, they don't really want to play it. They'll play it if forced too often, or as kind of a wild card every now and then. Their only loss was to Virtus Pro on that one. They're in very strong form there. Won the last 4. I don't really feel like they necessarily want to play that, but obviously when you think about playing against a team like FaZe, it's going to be available, and so you probably are going to pick it. So the question is, are you going to pick it early? Then they've got their Inferno. Famously, bearing in mind they don't play Nuke, they haven't in fact played it offline with Bolts. They are 3-3 with Bolts on Inferno, so it still remains their weakest map of the maps that they play. It's also a map where they haven't managed to fix it just by bringing Bolts in and kicking out Phelps. Everyone who thought Phelps was the problem, no, definitely not. I mean, I never understood why people blamed it just on Phelps. Yeah, he did some massive misplays, but Fur was doing his own share of fucking misplays on that site, on CT side as well, and continues to this day. So CT's on the B site, rather, not CT side, but yes, on CT side. The B site is still a liability for them. They've tried swapping Fallen over there. They've tried gradually improving their rotations. They still play fairly static over on the A site, where Cold Zero is fantastic. So their problem is they don't want to give up the strength of the A site to go and try and kind of plug the hole over at B, but then make A weaker. So it's a dilemma for them. They still don't want to play it generally, and obviously they're going to have to play it against FaZe. So what makes this map pool scenario interesting is that 2 of the 3 maps that FaZe love, so Overpass, Mirage, and Inferno. Well, Overpass and Mirage, absolutely SK is willing to play that. They're not going to be banning them, so we're going to see them in this series. Cobblestone, obviously, is a map that SK is fantastic on. People don't really test them on it, and it's the permaban of FaZe generally anyway. Meanwhile, over on the FaZe side of things, you think of, they don't really want to play Nuke. Well, that's actually SK's permaban as it is, as in literally a permaban. They do not play it at all and have shown no signs of being willing to give up a ban and necessarily play it. And even if they did, would FaZe go ahead and pick it? So I actually don't think we're going to see that many mind games, quite frankly. It's a best of 5 anyway, so you just do 1 veto each. And then at that point in time, it's just the order of the maps. So I think it's not going to be that crazy. Now, personally, when it comes to best of 5s, the philosophy for most teams should be load up all your good maps early. So you have your best chance early, you can get ahead in the series, you can hopefully win the series as soon as possible, so you're not playing a 5th game and feeling fatigued. But with that said, depending on how much of an underdog you are, if you have a surprise pick, like say the opponent, their 2nd or 3rd worst map is Cobble, and they're going to ban something else and leave Cobble in there, and you're like pretty good on Cobble, not your best map, it's maybe your 3rd or 4th best map. Actually, I think that you should put your surprise pick earlier in the process if you're an underdog, so that you can potentially get the Joker win early, and then when you're playing on the maps that you're good on but they're good on, you're already up a map. The psychological advantage, I think, is on your side, and if you've got a very strong map later that the opponent isn't strong on, you can use that as insurance. Now, it's a different mentality, certainly, but I certainly think it's one to consider, contrasted to just loading up all your good maps early, which, for example, is what Team Liquid did against FaZe and got 3-0'd. So I think actually the ban portion of this is fairly obvious. FaZe will ban Cobble, as you'd expect they will, because this is just not the team you want to test on that. I can see where they've tested other teams on it and tried floating it. You don't want to waste giving up that ban and letting SK pick Cobble, though. Almost certain they would win that, I think. SK, I think, will go ahead and ban Nuke anyway. I would personally say they should float it, but the fact that they just never offline play Nuke tells me they probably won't. They just will feel too uncomfortable, and they don't want to give it up to FaZe. And I think FaZe would win the map, but I don't think FaZe is fantastic on it. It's just that if you don't play it, the level of discomfort for SK would be overwhelming. So I think it will be an SK Nuke ban, which means that we've obviously got the 5 maps of... We've got the 3 that we want to see, which is Overpass, Mirage, and Inferno at some point, and then we've got Train and Cash as the others. So the question is the order. Now, personally, I think that both teams are going to start out with what they think is a strong map for them and a weak map for the opponent. So I think that FaZe is going to say, right, we love Mirage, we love Overpass, we love Inferno. Now, they could say, let's just pick Mirage straight away because they actually beat SK on Mirage at Blast Pro Series. But I don't think they will. I think FaZe will say, let's pick Inferno first. Let's get SK onto that map that everyone's been exploiting them on, that they're only 50% on with even with bolts in the lineup, that we are really strong on, and that we have an amazing CT side on. That's also, by the way, one of the maps where FaZe is actually much better at making those low econ force buys and actually just straight up pistol only buys work a lot better. I think perhaps because you can isolate medium to short range angles a lot more than some of the other maps in the pool, which is one of the reasons actually why I think they struggle on Train. Now, I think FaZe, as a result, will pick Inferno, and I think SK should pick Train, because we've seen the guys from FaZe have trouble on that, particularly on the T side. They really do rely on winning the pistol rounds and having a big CT half on that map, and Rain going ham. So I think with Guardian being off his game a little bit, I think that SK should actually pick Train here. They're really strong on it generally. Maybe not the best in the world. I mean, it's debatable, I guess. You could definitely put the old Astralis lineup with Device in. I think they should just pick it here because it's been an obvious weak point of FaZe, and so it gives SK a good chance to get going early on in the series. I think FaZe at this point in time, if they didn't pick Mirage first, they're going to pick Mirage now because they did do very well on it recently. They're amazing on that map. They played that map 14 times and won it 12 times, including against SK. So I think they're going to feel very confident on that. I don't think they should feel overwhelmingly confident because I think SK is pretty strong on it, but I think that FaZe will pick it here. I think that with 2 maps less, Overpass and Cash, I think this is where SK picks Overpass. They could pick Cash here because obviously they have a good record on it, but FaZe aren't that good on it. But although they've got a good record themselves, it's just that you look at how they play, especially in that game against Nip in the last map of the IM Oakland final, that T-side is really janky for the guys from FaZe. So I personally think SK just picks Overpass here, thinking just like FaZe did with Mirage. Doesn't matter if they think they're good on it. We've beat them on it recently. Obviously, SK actually smashed FaZe on that when they were at Epicenter. I think they'll feel very confident at that point in time. Plus, you want to put it as the 4th map so that if you're already 2-1 up, now you're just going to close it out on what you think is your strongest map, especially your strongest map versus this opponent, and not have to go to that 5th map where all the marbles are for play. Now, I think as a result, you get a decider of Cash. So here's how I think it will go. I think FaZe will win Inferno. Remember, these can be in any order because it's almost certainly going to be these 5 maps. I think FaZe will pick Inferno first, and I think they will win Inferno. I think their CT side is overwhelmingly good, and they can grind out on that map enough T rounds to get it done. Then you add in that their T side, especially their low econ force buys, is so aggro and actually efficient, and they're so apt to doing them as well against that B site defense, which has been weak for SK, that I think FaZe is going to win this opening map. So they're going to go ahead and win a map in this series. I think that if SK picks Train, first of all, then I think they actually will win this map. The only team that beat them on it, like I said, was Cloud9, who is a good team on it. I think SK has a good T side on this map. I think they've always known how to switch up the CT side to get a minimum amount of rounds and win the CT half. So I don't see FaZe winning this one because they have to kind of brute force it, and I don't think they can with the SKT side. So I think SK would actually win that map, and we would be tied 1-1 if they indeed pick those first. Then we go to Mirage, I think. I think that FaZe will actually win this. I think this is a key map because I think the eye test tells you SK's always been good at it. Cold Zero Fur have always been good at it. They've always had a decent enough read on this map, but I just think FaZe is too good on that map. They are exceptionally good. It's one of the maps that fits their T side the best because they can take that slow mid control. Everyone knows how to make the individual plays. Rain is unbelievable on that map. Nico's very strong. Then you go onto the CT side. Olaf Meister, Guardian, Nico are all in the spots that work for them. I think this is actually, it's no surprise to me they've won the most times on this map. For me, this should be the real home map of the guys from FaZe, although obviously you could make a case Inferno can as well. But I mean Mirage in as much as too many teams now are scared to play Inferno, even though they have to. But a lot of teams actually will go ahead and pick Mirage. So this is why I think it will be the home map of FaZe if they indeed go on to establish an era. Add in that they won their last 5 in a row on it, including over SK Gaming at the Blast. Now, Overpass, I think, will be the 4th map, and this is going to be the key map, I think, in this series. Because the results tell us that SK beat the guys from FaZe in massive fashion at Epicenter on this map. And obviously, this is the map classically where FaZe got that very aggressive TT style on bathrooms, and where that has caused Carrigan's teams in Astralis and in FaZe and in the new FaZe so many problems, and that's why he's never been able to beat them on Overpass. And so history tells us Fallen and SK will win this map, and therefore, by my estimations, it will be 2-2, and we're going into a 5th map. But I actually think that this is where FaZe will break through, because they are fantastic on that map. I think they will have a strong CT side of their own. I think they actually, after so many chances, I think they'll come up with some solution to Fur. I don't think they'll solve it. I don't think they'll just stop his aggression and make it not effective, but I think they'll have some counters for it, and they'll have some things prepared, because I know Carrigan has to be thinking about that and knowing it's going to be played in this series. Then you add in that actually the FaZe guys themselves are on a 6-game winning streak on this map, whereas against people not called FaZe, SK have had a couple of bumpy moments. They lost to NIP at IEM Oakland in the group stage, and they lost to Astralis at IEM Oakland, which obviously was when Astralis had got Device, who was ill and who'd arrived late. It was obviously an overtime game, but still, they lost to them. So I actually think FaZe right now, I think SK might be a better Overpass team, but I think FaZe actually will finally break through and beat them and edge it. So if the maps have gone the way they have so far, that would be the series. FaZe would now win 3-1, winning Inferno, Mirage, and Overpass. If SK manages to win out on that map, as historically they have, we would go to a 5th map, the decider, which would be Cash. And I actually think if we go to Cash, that SK Gaming will win. I think on that map in particular, I think it's a map that has a lot, it gives a big edge to clutch teams. That's why actually I think even Astralis have been good on it when they don't really like the map but get forced to play it. And I think that's actually part of the reason why SK is so good on the map, even though they don't like to play it and they don't pick it really. But it's a map that they always particularly do well on for some reason. So I think it's more in favour of the clutch team. I think you've got to have a decent grind out T side. And that FaZe T side that I've seen on this map, even when they've won against, I mean, mainly they've only won big against shit teams and they've won narrowly against the other teams. I think they're way too ropey. So if it goes to the 5th map and it goes to Cash, then I think that SK is going to win that map. So by the way, if you want to reverse the order and say SK might pick Cash as a result of the factors I've just mentioned, then we'd be going to Overpass as a 5th map, which by the way would be a dream. I think if we went 2-2 and Overpass was the decider, because what a way for Carrigan to potentially break that record and that streak on Overpass and against Fallen. And likewise, what a way for Fallen to win the tournament, beat out FaZe, perhaps come number 1 again, and continue his record on Overpass and continue his record against Carrigan. So would be cool either way. So personally, I think the most likely results are FaZe 3-1 or SK 3-2. Now, there's obviously a possibility SK could win 3-1, which I think comes down to them winning on Mirage, because they're certainly good enough to do it. The problem is, I don't really see them winning Mirage and Overpass. I realize it's a big grand final and there's the whole extra psychological component of the past curse, etc., which can play into it, and perhaps FaZe doesn't show up properly and they do lose these maps, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I'm going to say SK wins one of those 2 maps at best. I'm actually predicting them to lose both of them, quite frankly. So I think it's FaZe 3-1 or SK 3-2. I will go ahead and say FaZe 3-1. I'm going to buck history and the trend and say that actually FaZe breaks through and wins this one. Right, in terms of player strength in this matchup, the edge has to go to FaZe, because I think actually in terms of skill and strength of their players, they've got the better fraggers, they've got the better players overall. But SK has their players in better roles. Everyone in SK is in a good role. Even Taco, even Fallen, even Bolts. Obviously, we know Cold Zero and Fur are in the ideal roles. So I think in a sense, SK has their good players in better roles. FaZe has better players, but on some of the maps, on a couple of the maps, they're fantastic. On some of the maps, though, not necessarily in ideal roles. Now, in terms of other elements of player strength, well, we kind of know the player strength for SK, although one difference is Taco's level has actually been a lot better at this tournament than recently, but you never know if that'll continue until a final, and if they have to play 5 maps, well, I mean, that's like almost playing the whole tournament again in terms of how many you've already played, so I don't think recent form counts that much there. Now, on the FaZe side of things, interesting enough, Guardian for the first few events was like their second best player after Nico, basically. This event, he's had a bit of a lackluster tournament. I mean, they have stomped a lot of teams, but Rain is going ham again and has been for the last couple of events after his short dip at Epicenter. So actually, you look at it and you say that kind of evens out. Now, it means that perhaps Guardian's going to be less of a factor as an AWPer. He's obviously had his own problems against Fallen at times when he was in Na'Vi, and now that he's in FaZe. But I think that the Fallen factor won't be as big a deal because it might be 5 maps. If I don't see SK winning, well, they're not going to win 3-0. So I don't think that Fallen's going to go as ham. Like, I don't see him as a superstar player. I think what he did at Blast was amazing, but that was kind of a one-off. He doesn't do that often in this era, in the Phelps and Bolts era, contrasted against 2016 when he was very good in that sense. It is more about Cold Zero and Fur over on the side of SK. So I think that overall, it doesn't really matter the player strength, because I feel like SK is the better team of players, but FaZe is have the better players in their team, if you know what I mean. So team versus individual in a sense, which I think actually nullifies itself, because it's tough to know with how strong the FaZe team is if the team element beats them out. Obviously, historically, SK has an edge in this matchup. They have better tactics, they have a better T side, they can grind out and come back in the big games, and they've got the clutch factor of having some fantastic clutch players. Those are all great factors, and typically in this kind of a series, I would actually pick SK as a result of that. I always do put a lot of stake in the clutch factor, because it can allow you to win so many games, and teams that can come back in the games, it's a big factor. The difference is, though, FaZe seem one-dimensional, but if they are one-dimensional, they are unbelievably good at being one-dimensional. And so I actually think it overcomes some of the factors. So even though they're not that clutcher team overall, and even though they're not a good team at doing comebacks, and even though they're not a good team when they're off their comfort maps, they are so good on their comfort maps. They are so good at front running. They front run so often. They are so fantastic at the things they are very, very good at, that I still think that actually they will win this matchup, because their edges are, they've got better low econ play, they've got better pistol rounds, they're better at front running, they've got better CT sides. I think that that's actually going to be enough in this series. Obviously, the historical aspect of Fallen versus Karrigan is cool, but I think actually, finally, Karrigan is going to get that win. Fallen won't extend his record, and perhaps we will beckon the FaZe era.
Hey, I'm Lurpus. I played Counter-Strike for a living for 8 years. I've been on the desk for some of the biggest events for 5 years. I know nothing about Counter-Strike, but then again, neither does Thorin. Welcome to his YouTube channel.